Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Makers Demo Day. My name is Owen, and I'm a technical coach and pod lead here at Makers. And we're here this afternoon to showcase the incredible final projects developed by our May 2021 cohort. Each team today is going to present what they've been working on just since Monday last week, but exactly what they've been building up over the past 16 weeks total. So afterwards, please stick around for a Q&A session with myself and Tommy, who's our community manager and a member of our sales team as well, Joe. Many of you will already know that Makers Academy is a 16-week coding bootcamp. It's an intensive learning experience, and over the course of their time here, many developers go from knowing some coding basics to being able to build a full stack application from scratch. And we believe that anybody can learn to code. Just a few months ago, the developers you're going to see tonight were enjoying their first week here, getting to grips with test driving, pair programming, using Ruby classes for the first time. And now they're building and deploying entire projects to create the products that they actually want to use, which is always really amazing to see. I've had a really lovely time working with the May cohort. Way back on May 25th, on your second day with Leo, he asked what it was you planned on getting from your peer group sessions for the rest of the bootcamp. You mentioned a couple of different things you wanted to get from those groups, including celebrating your learning and successes, giving motivation to each other, discussing blockers and helping one another overcome that. And you absolutely did that, not just in your peer groups, but I also saw it a lot in your cohort channel, in your engineering project teams, in your pairing sessions, and it's been really lovely to see. I love the reflections you shared with me this morning in our end of course retro. It seems like you're genuinely sad to be parting ways with one another. And if that's not the sign of a supportive cohort, I don't know what is. So just remember to continue that peer support as you step into the next phase of your journey on Monday. The whole cohort has made incredible progress over the past 16 weeks. So each week, learners are faced with brand new topics, new challenges, and they have to build up both resilience and a process to break down those challenges and to work through them step by step. And you definitely rose to the challenge together. You all set out to learn a lot of new things over the past 10 days, and it's been really exciting to see you get to grips with them and with such interesting projects as well. So I'm super happy for all of you. I hope you're proud of the achievements that you made in the past few months. And without further delay, I'd like to introduce the first team to present this evening, and that is Pin My Hike. Their passion for this idea shone through from the get-go, and I was really impressed to see the progress you made in such a short space of time. Demand for getting out into green space in the UK has only accelerated over the past year and a half, so I'm excited for you to show off what you've been working on. So Pin My Hike, over to you whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Owen. I hope everybody can see my screen and listen to me well. So our team is called Pin My Hike. Our motto is don't follow the crowd, follow the pin. We're going to talk a little bit more about what this means. Now we're very excited to start this presentation day, but first of all, we want to speak about who we are. This team is composed by Frank McKenna, Cynthia Fu, Mikey Roberts, Ashley Slaney, and Chuka Okoye Haneku, and myself, Fabio Rodriguez. Now, the first thing we are going to talk about is the approach that we took, and Frank is going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Fabio. So the way we approached this was we wanted to build a project that we were all passionate about, and we all, luckily enough, had a keen interest in hiking, and we all wanted to work with the Google Maps API key, so it wasn't too difficult deciding what we wanted to do. In terms of what stack to use, we decided on the MERN stack because we're keen on challenging ourselves, and seems to be a popular tech stack that's in demand at the moment. We planned out our goals, our personal goals. We've got our MVP sorted and our nice to haves. So it just made it a lot easier going forward. And yeah, it's pretty smooth sailing. So yeah, over to you, Fabio.
That's great. And obviously we couldn't have done this without learning a lot about the MERN stack. And Cynthia is going to tell us more about what enabled this learning to happen.
Thanks for your question, Fabio. So communication was key for learning. We all had our individual learning goals for the project and we communicated that really early on. We planned our timetable to include self-led learning in the morning, which allowed us to work more effectively in the pairing sessions. And it also helped pair with different people each day to keep the creative juices flowing. Thanks, Fabio.
Perfect. That's all great, Cynthia, but we both know that it wasn't always a picnic in the park, pun intended. We did have some challenges, and Mike is going to tell us a bit more about that.
Thanks, Fabio. Yeah, so just to cover some of our main challenges. So going into it, we wanted to implement a new stack, and then with this, we decided to challenge ourselves and basically look at merge stack. We figured it'd be an interesting choice. As well, we decided we could utilize React to build a responsive application. So this obviously meant learning whilst we were building, sort of as we were going along. And we quickly realized that this required lots of research, sharing knowledge, and resources across a team, as well as a lot of self-led learning times. The next sort of point would be implementing Google API. So we realized that this is going to be a bit of a learning curve to begin with to initially implement it. As fetching API data was a fairly new concept to most of the team. So what we've done is we made sure that each of the team members got exposure by utilizing the API to build out each feature together as a group, and then also using tooling like Postman so we could test our API requests. And then the final sort of point to touch on would be setting realistic times for features. What I mean by this is we found that it was quite easy to underestimate feature build times. So this is a problem when features took longer than anticipated. So in hindsight, we agreed that it was probably worth overestimating features in future to properly prioritize more effectively. And with that, back to Fabio.
Great, Mikey. Now, when we think about challenges, the expression wisha, coulda, woulda comes to mind. Actually, if I were to give you a time machine, you could go 2 weeks in the past. How would you do things differently?
Yeah, so during the project, there were moments when we got stuck and we spent quite a lot of time trying different things that just didn't work. I think it would have been more efficient if we broke away from our peers and researched the blockers that we was hitting before we paired up again to work out a solution. The second point is, initially we focused on React and started building the front end without a server or a database connection. We soon found out that connecting the client side and the server side using Node and Express was more difficult than we actually anticipated. So after a lot of struggles and group discussions, we decided to create a brand new repository, but this time connecting all the technology we needed from the start to get around the issues we were having. Thank you, Fabio.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, that sounded very interesting, especially how we overcame that challenge. Chuka, do you have any other interesting stuff that you can share with everybody?
Thank you, Fabio. Yeah, so what we found very interesting as well during the project was the amount of accountability that we gave each other, in the sense of making sure that the code that everyone that was producing was thoroughly looked at and actually given a good look through into what was working or what isn't working. So we put restrictions in our GitHub so that other people can approve the code that was submitted before merging it into the main branch. And I feel that the processes that we learned from the calls actually gave us really good insights and allowed us to produce more effective and more efficient code that Fabio will be demonstrating now.
Thank you, Chuka. Now, without further ado, the demo of our amazing project. Now, as you can see, this is the layout of the map. We have a hiking theme going on with the colors that we chose. As you can see, there are some tents around. These are hikes that other users put in the past. Now, this is the functionality to drop a pin. As you can see, you can choose yes or no. Now, once you do, you can put a title, a description of your hike, of the experience that you had, and you can also upload, well, not upload, because we thought uploading images is so 2020. We should better just copy the URL and paste it there, right? Now, no joking aside, we didn't have time to implement this functionality. So this is the solution that we came in the meantime. but we're hoping to upgrade it in the future. As you can see, now we're submitting the pin. It has an image, the description, and the title. But we also have other functionalities, such as the search bar at the top, where you can search for other parks like Snowdonia. Now, the application will zoom in into the location in the latitude and longitude. Right now, we're gonna zoom out, and we're gonna use the geolocation functionality. So it takes us back to the location of the user. Right now I'm in Turkey, so this is why it took us all the way to Turkey. As you can see, I'm zooming out now. And this is our application. This is Pin My Hike. We had a tremendous time doing it, and we're very proud of what we accomplished. If everybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Pin My Hike, and special appreciation for Fabio's delivery. I need to ask you to facilitate the next demo day. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Triceratops, and this is absolutely one of the most unique engineering projects I've seen in my 2 years at Makers. I don't think niche begins to cover it, but without offering any spoilers, I've been blown away by the creativity that's gone into this journey. So Triceratops, over to you.
So hello, we are Triceratops. We have created a dinosaur-themed murder mystery game. So a little bit of an introduction to who we are. In the game, you play as the chief detective of Dinoville, helping our friendly dino cop solve a cold-blooded murder. The game is set in the room of the crime. You use your mouse to search the room and to find clues. The game involves clicking on elements, reading notes, reading diary entries, and your keen detective skills. And Mas is going to tell you about how we planned our game.
Thank you very much, Sean. I'm Mas, and I'd like to explain the team plan that we did. The idea of the game came about an organic way, born out of frustration of not being able to agree with an idea as a team. One actually made a joke of the game to say, "Oh, let's do a dinosaur game." And my tip here is to be very careful of the jokes that you say. Then we planned an MVP, which is basically a minimal viable product. It's basically a skeleton of the game, which we drew out an image of how we wanted the game to look and how the user would navigate the game. And then in our days, were filled with meetings where we discussed goals, assigned tasks, review and merge everything together so that we were able to code and know what the codes are doing. So the next day we could all carry on from the new updated work. The technologies that we used, we're very heavily focused on front end. So we chose to use React and JSX, which allows you to combine all the codes together. React Router was used as well, which allows the pages and app to one to the other. We started it with Bootstrap and CSS. All the art is original. We created from scratch by Camilla and I using digital art softwares. Triceratops, that's our game name, is live online on phones as well for everyone else to play. And moving on to Camilla. Thank you very much.
Mas, as a group, we had some challenges. Starting from the beginning, we were 6 people very excited and passionate about this project, and we had a lot of different ideas, and it was all clashing together. So we took a step back. We had a moment to talk about it, to chat as a group, and figure out how we could work better as individual or as a group as well. Also, we had problems with 2 of our teammates getting ill. So some days we only had 4 people working, so we had to reassign the tasks and the goals for that day. Fit our project in a stack. We want to work with MERN, so it's Mongo, Express, React, and Node. And we learned pretty quickly as well that we should be doing the other way around, fit your project to the stack, not the stack to the project. And also learning a new technology such as React from scratch was a huge challenge. So we took our time in the beginning to properly learn the technology and share resources and links in the group, so we all had access to it. We also reached out to coaches when we had blockers, and it was really helpful. Now Craig will show you guys the project.
Thanks, Camilla. As you can see, this is our game Triceracop. We'll head straight into it. So first of all, don't worry about reading all of the text on screen. We'll try and share a link somehow with you guys, and maybe you can play it later. But you basically play from the perspective of the chief detective. And you'll see straight away that as we start to mouse around the room, there's nothing that seems clickable except for the fireplace. So we started to implement clickable elements that would glow as you mouse over them. And then in turn, those elements would then unlock new elements to click on the screen. You can see here that the mouse is kind of hovering over things in your inventory. So you'll discover clues as you go, as well as letters as well that you can read and then find out more about the story. So I want to make a special thanks to Theo, part of our group. He wrote all of the story for the game. So special thanks to him. And then you guys are seeing all of the imagery. All of the images were completely drawn by Camilla and Mass in our group. So really big special thanks to those two. Nothing in our game has been taken from anywhere else. It's all original content, all original code, all original drawings. Part of the story involves multiple endings as well. And I believe that's everything. Sean, are you okay to skip to the end so we can show everyone the killers, a sneak peek, if you will, and then we'll pass over to Theo to talk about reflections.
Okay. Before I go on to reflections, I wanted to, on behalf of the whole group, also thank Jumin, who unfortunately can't present with us today because he's still unwell. But he's been a very valuable member of the team. So thank you so much, Ju, for everything that you've done. And we appreciate you a lot. So we all work very hard. So we're really proud of this project. That's our first point. One of the things that we notice is that, especially with coding projects, the progress doesn't always come linearly. We spent a long time in the first week and even the start of the second week researching the tech stack, specifically React, and trying to make little things work. And once we got all of those little things working, we're able to scale it very quickly and make the working game that Craig just showed you. We also, as Camilla touched upon, realized the importance of communication. After we had an open discussion, everyone was happier. Everyone felt like they were being heard, and we all worked more efficiently. We also were worried not using Node and a database, but by the end, we were all very happy with what we'd picked up in the last 2 weeks. So we saw that sometimes narrowing the scope of your focus is not a bad thing. And lastly, we appreciated that a lot can be achieved in a very short amount of time, as we hope you will see when you play our game. Oh, and also, if you want to find out who the real killer is, you have to play it as well. So there's another incentive. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching.
Thank you so much, Team Triceratops. I love that your presentation also came with like that incentive. You didn't let them know who the killer is, so I'm sure you'll get a lot of players later today. I also love that this idea blossomed from a joke because it's just turned out so stunning. Please stay together as a team, keep joking. I'm excited to see what you could do next. And last but of course not least, I'd like to introduce Tutor Room. We've absolutely seen a shift in the way people work and learn over the last year and a half. And this team has taken upon themselves to build something not only allowing them to practice a brand new tech stack, but to solve a very real problem simultaneously. So Tutor Room, over to you.
Okay, so I'm excited to introduce Tutor Room, the project that our team has been working on for the last 2 weeks. And I'm just going to introduce why we came up with the idea and our approach to the project. So since the beginning of the pandemic, schools have been closing around the world, including Makers, and the importance of online distance learning has been made really, really clear. And we all believe that there's a lot of progress that can still be made in that area. We wanted to create a simple tutoring site with customizable profiles for learners and tutors that would allow people to seek out individuals who had similar educational needs and priorities around the globe and connect people to learn together in the way that we have been so lucky to experience at Makers. Our approach from the beginning was to create something simple but effective. We didn't want to cram in too many features because we were learning new tech stacks, and we were confident from the beginning that if we stayed true to the focus of the project, we could create something really, really nice. So I will move on to Susanna, and she will introduce our planning process.
Thank you very much. On the first day, we held a kickoff meeting, which basically was a whole day long kickoff meeting, where we first shared our feelings, and everybody said their individual goal about this final project. And then we started to collect the project ideas. Then we voted for the best idea. And then we agreed with the technologies what we are using for. And that was the time when we created the Trello board, where we started to documenting everything, including our day schedule. So basically how our day is going to look like in the next 2 weeks. So we first hold a stand-up meeting in the morning, and then the whole day was a pair programming in Zoom breakout rooms. And then in the evening, we hold a retro. And as everybody was really, really motivated in this team, we work in solo in the evening. So then we decided to use a separate working on a separate repo in the front end and a back end. And to make a possibility to work everybody to work on the front end and the back end, we choose to use a 2-day sprints. And Arif going to tell everything about the technical details.
Thanks, Susanna. So the front end is built entirely in React, which is a popular JavaScript library. And this is what the user interacts with. This was tested using Jest and React testing library to ensure that we were testing in a user-centric way. The backend is a Rails API, which handles everything else that the user doesn't see. So in our case, this is mainly authentication and database management. This was tested using RSpec and Insomnia, which is a specific API testing tool. We also used Amazon S3 for cloud storage. So we chose this tech stack as some of us wanted to use the JavaScript-based MERN stack, and others wanted to use Ruby on Rails. So this solution gave us a good middle ground compromise. We essentially built 2 separate and independent applications that then talk to each other via common language, where data is exchanged via JSON files. This allowed us to learn a number of new concepts, such as the React JSX syntax, asynchronous JavaScript API calls, and server-side token authentication. I'll now give you a quick demo of the app. So we start at the homepage, showing a student in the middle of a tutoring session. In this demo, I'll show you 2 paths, one of a tutor and one of a student. Let me start by signing up as a tutor. All you have to do is fill out the form and then tick the checkbox to indicate that you are a tutor. Once that's complete, then you're greeted by the main search page where students can search for tutors. I'll talk a bit more about this when I come back as a student. So for now, let me go to my own tutor profile. As you can see, my profile shows my name, subject, bio, and profile picture. All of this can be edited, so let's do some of that now. I'll make a quick change to my bio and add a profile picture. Great, so I'm now ready for students to come find me. I'll now log out and show you the student journey. In the interest of time, I'll just log in as a student that I created earlier. And once that's complete, that will take me back to the main search page. So this shows all of the tutors in the system as cards with a nice hover effect. Students can then search for tutors by using a subject search. So as an example, I'll search for a music tutor. As you can see, all the celebs are in on this already. Now let me go back and search for the tutor that I just created previously. So I search by the subject. I can then view his profile and then send him an email to connect. I'll now hand you over to Michael.
On this project, it was actually a project with quite high complexity. Joining a React front end with a Rails backend is not something that is incredibly common. So although we did the usual methods of reading through documentation, Stack Overflow, tutorials written and video, there wasn't a terribly great amount of material to refer to. And so a lot of our learning actually centered around debugging, and which is one of the core skills that we learn at Makers. Testing exactly what would work to find out how the different programs were working. We then developed a lot in terms of our teamwork through communication to understand how each other worked and produce something far more efficiently towards the end. I'll pass you over to Mike, who will talk about blockers.
Thanks. So our first blocker, initially, the group was split between two ideas. So we had to use our stand-up time to discuss it in depth, taking a vote in the end. And then it came to which tech stack to use, and which is a small blocker because obviously some people wanted to use Rails and some React. So we used that as an indicator to split the front and the back end that way. So most of us had used Rails before, but never as an API, and most of us had never worked with the React framework at all. So we spent a lot of the first days unblocking ourselves and by reading documentation and doing tutorials and just learning as much as possible in a short time. Some of the more on the tech side, the token authentication, which is how users are logged in and out. Testing the JSON with Insomnia, which is the way that the front and the back end communicate, and mocking API calls to actually test that. We used mainly Stack Overflow, Google, contacting coaches, sharing information and useful resources between each other on our Slack channel, and then also being able to move between each other's Zoom calls to help each other out where we can. I'll pass you over to Jenny now to discuss our successes.
Thanks, Mike. So what we achieved for the last 9 days, it's been a quite journey. Firstly, we managed to combine what we learned from Makers, Ruby on Rails, with an entirely new tech stack, React.js. The team's support was essential as we learned and implemented the new technology, given the very short time frame. For example, on Tuesday, just 1 day before the feature freeze day, we decided to use Amazon Cloud Storage for the first time, which will enable us to upload images directly from React. Initially, we thought it would be relatively simple to do, but we ran into many bugs. But the group was determined and willing to take a risk together. Therefore, without the team's report, the task was impossible. So thank you, the team. Once we learn something new, we share with the rest of the team via Zoom meeting or share the group, Slack channel. Also, it's not a requirement for the typical stand-ups, but we make sure everyone is feeling okay each morning. Lastly, we built something we are all proud of. Thank you so much for watching. This is the end of our presentation.
Thank you so much, Tutor Room. Really lovely to see. And I'm going to keep my eyes on your project over the coming months to see if you decide to take it further. I'd be super keen to see that. Thanks a million. And thank you so much to our 3 project teams from May 2021. I'm so happy for you, all that you've achieved over just the past 4 months. You should be super proud of yourselves. It was genuinely a pleasure to work with you over your time with Makers so far, and I'm excited to see where you go next. Do take it easy this weekend, rest up. You have a lot to be proud of, so be sure to take some time to yourself to celebrate however it is that you choose to celebrate. And I'm going to hand over now back to Tommy for a Q&A with myself and Joe, our course manager. So please do stick around if you have questions for us about the Makers course, the kinds of things we coach here, our curriculum, how to apply, whatever it is you're wondering about. And thank you so much to our audience as well. Have lovely weekends.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Owen. Yes, and thank you everyone for attending. Do stick around, as Owen said, if you're interested in the course in particular. You can now ask us 3 questions. So Owen, you already know, he's given his introduction and he's one of the coaches at Makers. My name is Tommy and I am the community manager at Makers for about another half an hour, actually, because it's my last day of working at Makers and my final demo day. So I'm actually quite sad today, but it's an absolute privilege to be helping out and running things in the background a bit today. And then we also have Joe. So Joe, if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and what you do at Makers.
Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, I'm Joe. I'm one of the course managers here. So I'm pretty much everybody's point of contact all the way up until they're onto the course. So answering any questions at the beginning, getting you into coding, getting you to enjoy it, following you through that progress, then helping to prepare for the Makers application process, the interviews, the assessments that we do, and getting you set up onto whichever course that you're interested in, basically.
Amazing. So we've started having a few questions coming in. Just to reiterate again that if you do have a question, if you hover down the bottom of your Zoom window, you'll see a little image of 2 chat things and Q&A. And if you just type your answer into Q&A, and also you can upvote with a thumb, there we go, the ones that you're particularly interested in, and we'll do those maybe first. So first up we have from Serena and 3 upvotes, how does the hybrid course work exactly? That's probably, I don't know, this is a bit of a 50-50, this one. Who's keener to take it?
I'm happy to jump in and then maybe pass that in, maybe more of the sort of technical side of things and on how that would work. But yeah, we started our first hybrid course, well, we're starting it on Monday, which is our first cohort. Going back to this, we've kind of always in the past had this on site, and in the interim have been having this remote, but the remote is something that we've been doing for years as well. And it's very much a replica of the on-site, but we can talk about that another time. So for the hybrid, the course is split. The course is 4 months long, and the first month is what we call the pre-course. And the pre-course is something that's always been done remotely, and it always will be going forward. And then the next 3 months are what we call the full-time training. And for the hybrid, 50% of this is going to be taught in our London office, London Academy near Liverpool Street. And the other 50% is going to be taught remotely. Like I said, it's a complete replica, so it'll be still the collaborative way, still hands-on, still learning by doing and that type of thing. Same coaches, same people. And technically, there's in more detail what it will look like is week 1 and 2, which is your first weeks of the full-time training, time to put faces to names, that type of thing. Those will be done in person. Then you'll be back again on week 5 and 6, which is the weeks that we kickstart our group projects. Again, perfect time to kickstart those, get some good teamwork together. And then finally, you'll finish off in your final weeks of 11 and 12, doing your big final projects, which are the ones that you've just been watching here. And you'll be doing those in person in our academy as well. Yeah, Owen, was there anything else you wanted to add on to that?
I thought that was great. I think it's so hard to, there's so much to talk about with the hybrid cohort, but I think that you did really well to like capture the heart of it. But yeah, I'll just add like, I guess for some of the more technical aspects of it, pair programming, learners will still be next to one another when they're working in the office, but still socially distanced. They'll have a monitor to themselves using a screen sharing software so that you're not actually using the same keyboard, the same monitor to provide a bit more distance. We've really reduced our capacity for the number of learners that will be on site so that it will allow for a bit more spacing. It's capped for around 24 learners at the moment. For workshops, there's a number of different ways that we're exploring and how to deliver them. But the things that we want to prioritize are efficiencies for learners who have to stay home for whatever reason. Let's say you get kind of advice to self-isolate in a kind of scenario that's separate from the rest of your cohort. we want you to still be able to join workshops remotely. So we're doing a hybrid delivery, and that we want it to be a quality experience for learners who are in our office in those weeks that are designated to be in the office, which is half of the 12 weeks of the full-time course, but also for learners who might have to be at home for some reason. And for workshops, any differences that we're going to kind of run that is maybe different to our remote delivery is that max we might take the cohort in 2 halves for running smaller sessions. So it'll be the same session but in a smaller group, which is really not going to be kind of a negative impact in any way, positive if anything. So if you have more specific questions though, please feel free to ask and I will absolutely do my best to answer them.
I'll just add on to that. Thanks, Owen. I'll just add on to that the dates of the hybrid cohort. So what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year at the moment is alternating between running our hybrid and running our remote. And so we've just kickstarted the hybrid. So the next one in September the 20th is going to be a fully remote course. And then the following one on October the 18th is going to be our next hybrid. So applications are open for that now. And so if you wanted to get your sort of space secured on that and get your application in and we can sort of get you started. The start dates can be very flexible. So even if you submit your application and decide not quite ready and want to join November, cool, that's absolutely fine. And you can change that throughout the process before you start.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Joe. There's one I'm going to direct to Owen, the top question at the moment, and I'm going to link it to the code-related one from Joshua as well. So what frameworks do you typically use in the bootcamp? And then also if you could cover which types of code does the course use, maybe in the same answer, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to try my best to answer this question without taking like an hour, because again, there's a lot that you fit into 16 weeks. But we start off, so you know, for the 4 weeks of the pre-course, you're building up fundamentals in like using Git, virtual control, working with the terminal, and like problem solving. You're getting to grips with Ruby for the first time as your first language. So yeah, Ruby is the language that you'll begin with to build programming fluency. So this is as you get introduced to programming concepts, you start to explore a little bit about what it means to program. And that's what you pick up then with at the start of the full-time course. So for the first 4 weeks, we focus on Ruby, test driving in it, introducing object-oriented design to help you write better code. We move on to working with the web stack with a framework called Sinatra, and finally onto databases with Postgres. So there's a little bit more consolidation on that stack so far in your first engineering project, which is a great time to kind of consolidate and also learn how to work together in a dev team before you start the next module, which is called learning a new language. So the kind of language we center on that week is JavaScript, but the kind of focus is how can you take what you already know in a programming language and apply that to another? How can you find out what will translate and what won't translate, and start to get a bit of a process together for how you can learn any language after that. So it gets easier to pick up a new programming language each time you do it. So that's kind of the focus for that first week of JavaScript. So there's some more JavaScript after that, week 7. Then you do another 2 weeks of Ruby. You learn a brand new framework called Rails. And then from there, you can kind of like make your own decisions as to what you want to continue with. So we have another week on code quality when you do some practice tech tests. Learners typically take that in JavaScript or Ruby, but I've offered code reviews for one in Python before, and there's a little bit of flexibility there. For the last 2 weeks of the full-time course, you have free reign over your project with your team. So that's when you see developers start to pick up things like the full MERN stack to start learning React. I've seen Python projects and like AI, machine learning, stuff like that, which is quite interesting. So the thing that we want to build you up to, even though we have specific languages on the bootcamp, is to set you up for like lifelong learning, so that whatever it is you want to pick up or whatever it is you have to pick up on the job, you have a process for that. So we're really trying to instill a really good developer process so that no matter what you're working on, whatever the language is, whatever the stack is, you're able to have a process for breaking down a problem, for diagnosing your own learning needs, to debug, to find out how to debug in that language, things like that. That's what we want to build you up towards. I hope that answered your question.
That was amazing, wonderfully thorough. Thank you very much, Owen. So one for Joe, and there's a few related ones, so I think we can maybe try and tick them off at the same time. There's, if you want to attend the course in a few months, can you start or can you apply now? There's also, how long does it take? How long does the interview process take to apply? And then also, is there space and time to apply for the one this Monday? I don't know if we can sort of link those together.
Yes, yes, no, I think. So start with the one on Monday. So there isn't space on Monday. We usually wrap up the whole process, and we've usually filled the cohort in that week leading up to it. So this week, for example, we filled the cohort on Tuesday. So you want to make sure you apply to give yourself enough time to make sure you get onto the cohort that you're going to aim for. And the first one, sorry, Tommy, was...
if you want to attend in a few months, can you start applying now?
That would be ideal. I think the earlier you apply, the better, because the first thing we're going to get you doing is just seeing if you enjoy coding. We've got loads of different websites that we can recommend. We've got different workshops that we run a couple of times a month, and then we run another one aimed at more people just starting out, which happens around about once a month. So there's loads that you can get involved with way before you join. And this is kind of all still part of that application process with us. What the application process looks like is learning a language called Ruby, and you're going to be passing a coding assessment with us in that language Ruby. And so to prepare, there's 2 websites. The first one is just Code Academy, which I'm sure most of you will have heard of, probably the UK's biggest free coding website, and it's perfect to do that. There's a basic course on there that's about 10 hours long. That'll introduce you to Ruby, what it can do. Then you want to put it all into practice, which goes on to the second website, Code Wars. And Code Wars it's a bit of a jump up, and it's definitely sort of momentum that you'll build with it, but it's all problem solving and all challenge based. And that's going to be similar to what the coding assessment's going to be. And so the Code Academy is it says it's 10 hours, I'd say it's more like 20 once you start doing a bit of research and doing the exercises and things. The Code Wars section can take about 2 weeks. So on paper, it could take you about 3 weeks, but you want to give yourself a little bit more time, I think. The more prepared you can be for the course, you're just going to do yourself a bigger favor. And if you exceed that, there's always stuff that we can give you, again, even to push yourself further. But I always sort of advise applying about 5 weeks beforehand, so that you give yourself breathing space to go through those resources. You get to book in the interview with us, and you're sorted and your place is secured at least sort of 2 weeks before the cohort starts. So yeah, hopefully that answers those questions.
Amazing, thanks for that, Joe. Sorry for the triple whammy.
Okay.
So another one for you, Joe, actually. Firstly, I'll go for Jess's question on, if you take the course in London, are you supported with work coaches or sort of job hunter support, I suppose, specifically for work in London, or can you access links across the UK?
Yeah, good question. So are you supported by, so you're very much supported by these career coaches, we call them, and we've got technical coaches and more sort of pastoral support coaches, and then we've got a second team in the career support called the partnerships team. And I used to work on the partnerships team here for about 2 years, and our job is to go out there and manage our relationships with the hiring partners that we have. And so a hiring partner is a company that works with us to hire junior roles, and they would put that role exclusively to the makers job hunters. And so wherever you're based in the UK, you can apply to these. I would probably say they tend to mostly be London based, just because it is the biggest tech hub in the UK. But for example, we recently just put 2 roles up for Bristol based company, and there are others that dot around the rest of the country. Remote working is becoming a lot more apparent, so there's going to be opportunities to apply for companies that you might not be directly closely living by, and that's just the partnerships team that are bringing those roles. When it comes to those technical coaches and those sort of pastoral and support coaches, you can use those as much as you want wherever you are, and you can kind of tailor your experience with them a bit. So for example, if you're looking for a large financial organization in Manchester or something, then tell them that, and they'll help you sort of angle yourself to advertise yourself to get those roles. about 40 to 45% of people get roles through our hiring partners, and then the rest get jobs that they found themselves and through the support of our careers support team. So wherever you are, there's going to be lots of support. There's also the whole alumni support as well, which is this huge thing at Makers that Tommy has been building and working with for this whole time here, and has made such a strong community. But it's basically this 2,500 coders network handed to you on a plate, who are 8 years into their career to a week into their career, and they've done it all, and they're all over the UK. So there's always going to be someone to speak to and to help you when looking for a job, whether you're London based or not.
Yeah, and actually just vibing off that, Joe, yeah, in the alumni community, you're invited to sort of our alumni forum when you leave Makers and start looking for your job. And yeah, there's a separate channel for a huge number of different locations around the world and around the UK. So there's a Northern Makers, there's a Bristol Makers, there's a Spain and Portugal and all sorts of places, and everyone's always looking to help out the latest maker on the scene. So that's always a good network to tap into as well. Similar, I'm going to go back to you, Joe, for one more. There's a question on whether there's a job guarantee after the Makers course.
So there's no sort of guarantee in your contract or this when you sign on to join Makers, but all of this support is there available for you, and you can really use it as much as you want to, and we really encourage you to do that. And that won't stop until you've got a job. And so we're here to help you. So if you're there to help yourself and to do it alongside with us, then you'll do well. But it isn't just a job handed to you on a plate. It is still, you've still got to keep your coding going, keep committing, keep getting stuck in, keep your learning progressing, as well as that job hunt. You've got to really see that as kind of like a full-time thing, just like you did for the bootcamp. And if you do that and you enjoy coding and you use the support, you'll do very well. In terms of, but you want to not see this as just this super quick win. And so you want to make sure that, I suppose, you're financially covered, so that if the job hunt can take up to 5 months, 6 months, that you're covered in that sense, because it can take that. And there's a lot of jobs out there. We've got the support. You'll do well. So in a way, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's there, but the guarantee itself isn't there.
Cool. Thanks for that one, Joe. And I'm going to go to you, Owen, on a couple of questions related to sort of tech stack choosing, I suppose. So there's one in chat actually, which is, how do the cohorts choose or prioritize which stack to use for the final project? And do you have any advice on how to research that ahead of time? And that also links to Luke's question in the Q&A, which is tech stacks used for personal projects. And is there room to work on personal projects and choose a tech stack for that?
Cool, thanks. I'll start with Luke's question, because it's like a hard no. It's not a hard no. It's like a 90% no. I would say, like, usually my advice is don't do a lot of, okay, so I guess I need to be clear about like the scope. So when you say personal project, I think of something that's quite like, this is my passion project on the side, that's like kind of a big investment, rather than you working on personal projects as you kind of progress through the bootcamp. So I'll take each of those individually. So I think there's a lot of room for like creativity and personal projects throughout that bootcamp, because basically at the start of each learning unit, or at the start of each week, we're going to introduce this kind of array of learning objectives to you to say, this is what you should work towards this week. And here are the kind of practicals, exercises that will help you make progress towards these. Here's the workshops that we're going to run to kind of demonstrate the core ideas. And then the thing that you're trying to build is like you personally finding your way to those learning objectives, because it looks so different for each person. And that can be around the kinds of things you decide to work on. It can be about the kinds of resources you use. For example, you could be somebody who really enjoys like video lectures or something like that. Like you can happily put in your earphones, watch a 30-minute video about a programming concept and absorb it and feel ready to apply it. Personally, my brain completely switches off and I realize like 8 minutes in, I haven't listened to a word that's been said. So I have to turn off the video and I do something like that's maybe more just like coding. And yeah, it's really different for every person. So those kind of personal projects that you might pick up on a smaller scale, I'd really encourage. I think it's really cool. And I have seen learners do that. Like typically they'll do it in whatever kind of language is being coached at that time. And it might be something that they're kind of building on week by week. And we have some suggested smaller projects for that kind of thing, like small to-do lists, diary apps, that kind of thing. So as you are introduced to new frameworks and things like that, you can keep building on it, which is quite nice. But it's really for like practice more than anything else. So where I said like a hard no, my mind immediately went to an idea of that kind of bigger passion project, something that you're really driven to like build. And that's one of your goals in coming to Makers, because the bootcamp is so intensive and the like 16 weeks are so curated to only focus on that. And you know, when you're not focusing on that, to be taking care of your well-being, like in a way that is restful for you, so that you're finding time to switch off, you're finding time to do whatever it is you do to relax, family, friends, whatever it is. Some people are really energized by doing more programming, like on side projects and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm not going to come to your house and take your laptop from you and say, don't do that, because I'll trust you to like figure it out as you go along, what works well for you. But yeah, I think the thing I'm really mindful of here is like your energy levels and avoiding burnout, because you know, it's possible. So it's something we keep an eye on. I think I don't know if I've answered your question properly. If you want to tell me exactly what your personal project is, I'll tell you yes or no, or we'll try to figure it out together. But yeah, it's a good question, and something that like, you know, any coach is happy to chat to learners about as they move through the bootcamp. Or if you're interested in reaching out before, please do. For the other question, how do the cohorts choose and prioritize which stack to use for the final project? Is there any advice on how to research this ahead of time? Cohorts are often swayed by the like enticing idea of React, because React is known to be like a quite popular framework. They want to get into like the MERN stack, and that's fine and that's cool. You can work on a project with a particular stack just because you're interested in learning it. That's kind of how I got onto become an iOS developer. I just thought it seemed shiny and nice, and that worked out well. So I won't stop you. So you're so independent at that point that like it could be something that you are really interested in a tech stack and you kind of revolve your project around that, or else you're really passionate about your project idea. And then when you come together with your project team on that first day of the 2-week project, you will kind of sit down and think, what is it that we need from these languages and from these frameworks? What could maybe serve the purpose and like fulfill what we need to do and not provide any extra baggage? So I think the latter is probably the best way to go about it. And you do get support with that. Like we introduce you to your teams, we kind of kick things off, talk to you a little bit about what your focuses should be on these 2 weeks. So like, you know, well-tested code, a good distribution of the work, everybody's listening to each other, everybody's happy and proud of what they're working on, and we'll leave you start to go and investigate and form your ideas. We check in with you later that afternoon, talk a little bit about what is the MVP that you're working towards, what are the kinds of things you're thinking about in terms of your tech stack, and we kind of just have a chat like that, like ad hoc, and try to help you figure it out for yourselves. But you very much own these projects, because by that part of the bootcamp, you're very independent, and you're more often than not telling us about all of these amazing things that you've discovered and the things that you're planning for that 2-week period.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that one, Owen. I was, again, very thorough. Brilliant. There are a couple that are related to tests for being accepted, which I'll take for now, and Joe can maybe add if there's anything extra. So there's a top question, or question at the top says, are there any tests, etc., prior to being accepted for Makers? And that links as well to, is there a test from Valentina? Is there a test to pass after the pre-course? So in terms of getting into Makers, as Joe mentioned, you'll be directed towards some resources to work through, and we'll ask you to give us your scores at the end of those resources. So as Joe said, one of them is doing the whole of Code Academy Ruby, which takes it says 10 hours, but a little longer if you want to research stuff on the side. And we'll ask that you reach 100% of that. There's no sort of absolute test, but you just have to, you have to submit a form that says that you've completed that. And then also we ask that you get to 100 points or 100 honor on Code Wars, which I think that takes sort of somewhere between like 20 to 30 little mini code challenges that you can work on yourself. Once you reach that stage and you've submitted those scores to makers, then Joe and some of the other course managers will send you a link to take what's called a Codabite test. And that it's sort of, it's like another set of coding challenges, a little bit like Code Wars, and we'll be able to assess how well you've done by reading the code that you submit and seeing how you went about solving that problem. So it's like a little pair programming test, basically. And that gives us a score that then either gets you onto a phone interview, or you might be asked to go back and do a little bit more work on your Ruby, maybe a few more Code Wars, that sort of thing. Joe, is there anything that you'd add to that?
No, I think that's good. I think you rounded it up and did it well. And if you needed support throughout that time, if you had little questions, or if you're flying through, we can move as quickly as you want us to, or we can help you out and give you some tips and support as well. I always say, just keep us updated with how you get on, and the more you kind of communicate with us, and the more we can sort of help you along.
And then Owen, just on at the end of the pre-course, there's no sort of set test, but what's the are there any sort of checks that are done through the pre-course before starting the main course?
Yeah, so pre-course is like a really important kind of part of the journey that it's like great practice. It introduces some like really important fundamentals for the full-time course, but I think something that it's useful for is gauging whether or not you're ready for the intensity of the full-time course. So we do keep tabs on learners' progress. There are kind of checkpoints that we expect you to hit each week that we're checking in on, and we check in with learners who might be falling a little bit behind where we expect them to be, and we just see, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? Is there anything you need support with? Anything you want to let us know about? And take it from there. So part of those milestones are mandatory. So if you were not to hit them, you would be asked to defer to another cohort. And that's also subject to like admissions decision and capacity and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely also part of the kind of milestones you need to hit, because it's better to, get the support you need, whether that includes dropping back to a later cohort rather than getting into the full-time course when you might not be ready, because the intensity then does get quite a bit more, especially in the first couple of weeks as you get into the rhythm. So yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for that one. There's another quick one that I'll take because we touched on it a little bit from Anonymous. How will makers help with the job hunting after the course? So as Joe mentioned, towards the end of the course, you'll start to develop a relationship and have some sessions with the sort of the job hunting support team and the careers coaches. There are a couple of careers coaches whose whole job is to prepare you for your interviews, check through your CV, suggest more resources you could be working on, work with you to find like a company that you're interested in and see the types of resources that might be the best thing to do to help you apply for that company and succeed. And yeah, even things like when you have an interview, you can submit a form that will pair you up with someone to really help prepare you for that interview and alert some of the team that someone's coming close to their interview. So it's someone to really invest in and try and get them up to speed. So there's a huge team basically. Like when you finish Makers, it's absolutely not the end of that experience. We're by far the bootcamp that provides you the most job hunting support until you find a role. So yeah, that's that one. Joe's answering a couple by text as well, actually, which is great. There's a question from Lenish on, I saw makers run coding apprenticeships as well. However, I haven't heard of anything about it for a while. Do we still do them? Joe, would you be good with that one?
Yes, so we still run the apprenticeship. They just run quite a lot less frequently than the regular bootcamp. So for the regular bootcamp, we run them every 4 weeks. And for the apprenticeship, it's around about every 3 to 4 months. And so, yeah, they come through it a little bit less frequently. The best place for you to find out straight away about it is by submitting your, and I'll send it, it's by submitting your email on our apprenticeship page, and we'll email you when these opportunities come through. Once the application process for the apprenticeship is slightly different. And so you first once the opportunity comes up, you apply to us and you pass our selection process, which is very similar to the one that Tommy describes for the bootcamp. Once you've completed that, you won't have to complete that again. And then you'll sit in our candidate pool, ready to apply to these opportunities as they come through. As you can imagine, it's an amazing opportunity and it's super popular. So it's really competitive. So it can take a little while. The bootcamp is very quick turnover. You can apply whenever you'd like. I think the apprenticeship works a little bit better if you don't mind waiting a little bit longer for that opportunity. But it will come through. So it's one to be patient for.
Good stuff. Thanks for that, Joe. Also, sorry to Jess, just to clear up something I said earlier. No, the Codabite test doesn't, there's not a pair program live with another person aspect of that. It's merely the fact that we can watch how you typed to code your response. So only that element of it being it's a bit like being your pair when we watch back the video, but don't worry, there's no explaining your thought to a microphone or to someone virtually or anything like that. There's quite a few questions related to whether we'll continue remote and when full-time might be. So Joe, I don't know if you could touch on, is there any indication as to when full-time in-person cohorts would resume?
That's a very hard question. I don't think anybody knows really. We're doing, we understand our space. We know the academy that we've got, and we know how to run cohorts. We know how to run these classes. We're trying to do it in the safest way that we can for everybody. And so far at the moment, the period for the rest of this year of alternating between these hybrids and remotes, we are confident that this is balancing the best way we can run it, the best for our learners and the safest way for our learners and the most efficient way. So we're going to review this as we always do. We're going to review it as we go along. The first cohort for hybrid starts on Monday. So again, we're going to learn a lot from this one as well. But as we all know, the COVID situation is up and down. It's round and round. You don't know where it's going to go. So we've got teams that monitor it. We meet regularly, and we're a company that can move quite quickly and always looking to improve as well. So I can't give you a date. I can't give you an answer, but it will be when we can be in a politician's answer. But yeah.
Thanks, Joe. And similar-ish theme, art from Valentina. Are we planning to keep the remote course when the pandemic situation is finally over?
A good question, and I would have thought definitely so. We've been running a remote version of the course for long before the pandemic hit, and we've got a real reach over the UK, and there's definitely a need for running a remote course for people who don't want to travel. The hybrid world is upon us, and there'll definitely be a demand for that for sure. So I'm confident we'll keep going for the remote.
And that links into another question on how many cohorts will we run next year, and will there be any flexibility towards remote/in-person attendance?
Sorry, Tommy, I was just posting that thing in the chat.
Oh, that's right. It's a question just towards the bottom. How many cohorts will we run next year, and will there be any flexibility towards remote or in-person attendance?
So I think I mentioned we run a new cohort for the bootcamp every 4 weeks, and that always starts on a Monday. So you can kind of work your way through the year. I think it ends up being 13, which is an awful lot. And yeah, you have that flexibility to choose whether you'd like it to be, at the moment, remote or the hybrid. And then, as we've just discussed, hopefully there'll be some more options for in-person in the future. But yeah, you'll be able to have that choice for sure.
Amazing, thank you for that one. There are a few more that I think Joe can, they're a bit more sort of individual specific, so Joe can write some text replies to those or get back to us afterwards. There is one more that I don't know if Owen can help with this one. The second question down there of will makers be looking to get the course certified, any kind of accreditation, or what are our reasoning for, sort of not being like a certificate organization is?
Good question that I don't know what Maker's answer is. I don't know if there's like a greater kind of reason behind this. So just personally, from what I would imagine is that I don't think so. Like, I guess what Makers has always provided is a foray into becoming a programmer, and as somebody who like studied software engineering at university and didn't feel like I could call myself a programmer afterwards, the accreditation, is that I pronounce it, does not a programmer make. But there's probably a way more official answer for this, or maybe we are and I'll have to eat my hat, but yeah, maybe a question for like an email or something like that.
I think so, potentially, yeah. The only thing that I've heard in the past is there are certain rules and regulations when you become like government affiliated and accredited in that way, which when you want to be as kind of quick changing and fast moving as Makers is with the course, where feedback from a previous cohort could result in some small changes or sometimes large changes being made to the way the next one is delivered or certain aspects of the curriculum, to then re-get that accredited every time is really difficult. So actually it just enables us to be a little bit quicker with our changes than maybe a university where they only do it on an annual basis. And yes, exactly, like what is the piece of paper, I suppose. The proof is in the proof of the pudding's in the eating and getting your job. So
your answer was super official. That was much better than mine.
Oh dear. Oh no, don't type the answer. So I think the rest of those are a few specific ones. Let me just go to the bottom. Is the Makers Bootcamp recognized by large companies in the UK? Similar to question about, yeah, interesting. Again, a bit like the proof is in the or the concept has been proven, as it were. So if you look at where our alumni work and where many of them get their first jobs, even before they have any further developer experience, that's sort of all the proof you need. In addition to that, if you look at some of the people that we run our apprenticeships with as well, it's also some very large companies. So everyone from Lego to Google to Simply Business to Compare the Market, Deloitte have a huge number of makers. So some of the largest companies in the UK hire an awful lot of makers. Even just at Deloitte, which is one of the big four accounting or consultancy companies, has something like 60 alumni who either work there or have worked there. So yes, absolutely, it's a highly regarded course to go through these days. Okay, I think the rest of them are quite sort of specific to the person's question and less general. So I will copy these questions, and I have your email addresses, and make sure that we get back to those over the coming, well, probably after the weekend, to be honest. But I think for now we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for everyone joining us, and to the 36 attendees who stayed right to the bitter end. My pleasure to have everyone here. Thank you very much to Owen for hosting such a wonderful demo day. Almost forgot what we're doing here. And Joe as well for all your wonderful answers to the questions this evening. And have a lovely Friday evening and a lovely weekend, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tommy.